So that's when I said, push the lane. I barely know it.
Wow, an attempt was made.
Certainly an attempt was definitely made. Hello, human beings of the internet.
That would be that would be more the better segue would be some along the lines of it, and that's how I got drafted for the North American pro scene in law.
Yeah, yeah,
I
okay.
it's weird. I mean, I'm not very good, and I'm I'm from the United Kingdom, but
Yeah, I'm from.
they're taking all bets apparently.
Yeah. I'm British, and I've not played Summoner's Rift as a competitive game mode for about 7 years. But
And let's be honest, it wasn't competitive at the time.
we took part. I think I remember actually taking part in one of those, like, before Clash was actually a thing. Bring your friends or make a team together for an online tournament. We lost every match we came against, but we had fun.
Video games were played.
Video games were
Entertainment
definitely
was
played.
engaged with.
Yeah.
I'm gonna close my door. BRB.
No worries. I will just introduce the podcast. This is the very zoomed in face of Ryan here. So let's go. It's the Immaterial Gamers Podcast. This is episode 253. We've been I applied to see if we could get ad revenue on the podcast. We've been told we're not big enough. I understand that. It was an attempt. It was there. I thought, let's go for it. All we need to do is look at around 2,000 monthly downloads. That's all.
2000.
2,000. So only
Hmm.
about, on average, about another 1,993 downloads to go.
Hey, I mean that's
That's
more
7 more
than
than I thought we were actually getting. So
I
that's
be honest. To be honest, uh, hey,
yeah.
you know what? That's we're almost there.
There was a weird. I did actually have a look at the insights this week, and there's been a weird one because I looked at it and it said, your podcast has been downloaded 243 times in the last 24 hours. I'm like, hey, what have we done that's that important? Had a look at the
It's like that doesn't
location.
seem. It's like that
It's
doesn't seem correct.
Yeah, it's a bot farm from Singapore. um,
It's just like I don't even know. Like, I mean, I guess I don't know, man. You can make money off of anything, but like, how do
yeah.
you scam that? How do you like, what can you do with 240 copies of the Immaterial Gamers podcast?
Yeah. Particularly, I don't even. It wasn't even the most recent ones. I think it's just like being 243, which I think may have just actually been one botted view of pretty much every podcast that's ended up on there, just like all played simultaneously. It's like, what? I mean, for a start, that is a killer on the ears. Trying to hear 243 different versions of the podcast, and varying sound qualities
Hmm.
and volumes. Because normalization is a thing I don't do. But yeah, anyway, live from Canada is Duncan,
That's me.
and live from the LCS stage in um, Los Angeles.
Mm.
I
Somewhere.
think it's LA.
And this is exactly what it looks like. Also,
Yeah,
currently,
absolutely
it's
empty. The LCS stage has, as far as I'm aware, not been used at all this weekend, which is a bit weird because I still remember on the fact that the LCS, and this is going to be the main discussion of the podcast, by the way, at this point, because it's big enough. It's big enough to discuss. But as I did may have put in our tweet, it is two men who don't watch the LCS trying to make sense of probably the biggest, like the most significant bit of esports related news in a long while. Because it involves unionizations and walking out and sticking it to the man. Where in this case the man is Riot, and also the organizations that the players work for. so
mm.
so I mean,
Ugh,
yeah,
kinda.
yes. So you posted this in the news, and I was speaking to Stefan or you posted this in our news chat in the Discord. At the same time, I was actually talking to Stefan about it while we were at our fortnightly pub quiz that we were at, which is basically.
I hope you don't say that word to him too often. He might stop going with you. He's like, wait a minute, Fortnite?
Fortnite? No.
Oh,
Well,
no.
to be fair, the guy at the pub quiz at our now local pub quiz haunt, Pixel Bar. He does call it the bi-weekly quiz, probably just in case there are people who, like
That's
Steph,
better.
just flash red with rage at the thought of that game.
Yeah, it's probably for the best. It's the
Yeah,
healthiest decision
yeah,
long term.
it is. It is. Um, may have ended up. Look, the last time we went to, it was a normal themed quiz this fortnight, bi-weekly thing. This particular time. Last time it was a Zelda themed quiz, as we discussed, and we were god awful. So to then have it looked like a question each round that was something involving Zelda, I may have flipped out at one point. I mean, the answer was Legend of Zelda, but I've had enough of that. I've had enough of the questions. Look, I'll take it where the answer's old school RuneScape, for God's sake, and I've never played that. But anyway, LCS walkout. Sorry. Let's get back on track here. Yeah, no LCS happened this week because the players' union, for lack of a better term, I wouldn't say unanimously voted with an overwhelming majority to not play the first week of, or to walk out and essentially not play the first week of the LCS, to the point that
the North American League of Legends pro scene.
Pretty much doesn't exist at the moment, with a chance that because this is an active story, and by the time this comes out on the Wednesday, things may have changed. Not looking likely at the moment, but things may change. There is as I say, there is a chance that there may not be an LCS summer split this year, and as such, a consequence of that, there will not be American representation at Worlds this year, which is
which that could definitely I
that.
mean, if it's a big deal. It's a huge story in the esports world.
And part of what we needed to do was at least try and read up and see what's happening. And we got a couple of, I've put a couple of things in our news chat. One was a video from the Score Esports, effectively their League of Legends man. I believe his name goes by the name of Danny Burke. Did a primer, basically just a video explaining the walkout. And the other thing that we got is just a sort of a text piece of news which has the timeline of what happened. But to put it briefly, franchising's fucked it up. Both so for those who sort of not in the know, there's LCS and, in fact, actually, it's pretty much major. I don't want to say major leagues. As far as I'm aware, no, we'll go with what we know rather than just guessing and thinking. The LCS, along with the LEC, operate under a franchising system. So back in the early seasons of League of Legends, orgs had to go through qualification systems in order to enter Tier 1 play, the LCS, the LEC. And below that, there was a Tier 2, which was the League Challenger Series, or the League of Legends Challenger Series. And that happened also in the LCS and the LEC. I believe in the East, they still have some form of that. So teams had to play well, because if they didn't, they would get demoted to the lower tier of league. And in a situation where you don't really get that much money anyway, you'd have even less of it.
Yeah.
On the flip
Yeah.
side,
Basically, yeah.
succeed.
Basically, the idea was that you actually had to perform
Mhm.
well as an organization consistently in order to keep your spot in as like as keep your status as like a pro org that
Yeah.
do it participating in like the regional and and international uh tournaments.
Mhm.
And if you sucked, you'd have to you go down a tier, and
Yeah.
you'd have to get good scrub
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Get good. That was it. You failed your promotion series. That was it. But then in like sort of the end of the last decade, 2017, I believe, is where all the timelines go. Um, Riot brought in franchising to all these top leagues, which meant teams could just pay for their slot, and there was no promotion or demotion. And as such, part
Yeah,
of that part,
they would just have they had just had like 10 permanent spots being
yeah,
occupied by major organizations.
yeah, and players could swap around each split. They'll do that. They don't draft them. They just transfer just like any other team. But those teams, those organizations, provided they didn't go under, were there to stay. So that's just sort of how that works. And as such, there was no they got rid of the whole promotion demotion system. They just what they did instead was they had in the form of the LCS, they just had the Academy League. They turned their Tier 2 tournament into an Academy League, which all of the 10 organizations that were in the LCS had to field an academy team. That was sort of I guess the bargain, the negotiation. It's like, right, yeah, you can have your slot in this top league, but you need to show to us that you're cultivating talent by also having an academy league. And this is where things have, just to fast forward a bit, this is the whole issue that's come up, because the reason this walkout is happening, and this has happened over the whole of May, the reason this has happened is organizations, as of the beginning of May, no longer had to field academy teams. And pretty much the moment they were told, or the moment they agreed with Riot that they didn't need to field academy teams, 7 out of the 10 teams, or 7 out of the 10 organizations in the LCS said we're no longer having academy teams at that point. And yeah, the players didn't feel happy about that, because that sort of completely threw away the whole idea of trying to get more talent, because if you don't have players trying to, if there was no, what should we say, incentive, if there was no incentive to actually being able to get a pro slot in a system which is, already hard to become, one of the best in that game. Let's take it into account. 10 organizations, 5 players on each organization, 50 people in a population of, how many players would you reckon?
In North America, about half
Yeah,
a billion, roughly.
yeah.
Well, I mean, there's half
No,
a billion people to play. There's like probably, you know, you know, oh god, how many people play League of Legends? Like 100 million people or something like that.
yeah,
Probably a good 10 from North America, I would say. 10
yeah.
million,
So,
5 to
so
10, anywhere in that range
yeah.
easily.
So you see, we are looking at like point. Let's be honest. A generous 0.1% of league players make it to being a pro sort of LCS player, and that's being generous. I haven't got the statistics.
That's
I haven't.
see, that's you're missing several
Several
zeros,
zeros, several significant digits beforehand. Um,
orders of magnitude.
yeah, but let's just go with that. An extremely low amount of people, and that's something that I think sort of people need to be aware of. And it's why I always have this sort of all this like funny argument that always comes down to it when I see people online and in discourse going, "Oh, these players are so shite. Oh, I could do better than them." And it's like, remember at that point, pal, it's like, if you could, you'd be there. It's a
Yeah.
it's a simple 6 words at that point. If you could, you'd be there. Um, but yeah, so the Players Association sent Riot a list of, what was it? I won't say 5 demands, but they were demands. So I'll read this from the .esports article that come out because I'm not sat there playing a video and then just nodding to it. So they asked for 5 scenarios in order to not walk out. They wanted a Valorant-style promotion and relegation between the LCS and NACL, which is North American Challengers League, is what they call it.
It's pretty much exactly the system that they had in
Yeah,
League when
yeah,
it first launched.
yeah.
That is the system that is in place in Valorant actively right now, and it's successful and people love it,
which is
and they want to bring it back and make it more like Valorant.
So it's VCT, isn't it? It's like the sort of there's a thing, isn't there? There's basically, yeah, like you say, Ascension, I think, is like the big one, and then, yeah. But yeah, like you say, just bring it back, roll it back. Add a bit of... Okay, Martin has just to go, he was more than generous for 1%. If we were looking at that, which Challenger tier players, 0.024% players at Challenger, but I'm trying to think the requirement for a League of Legends player to be able to play pro is diamond and above. So
okay, well, with that, you're looking at 3% then.
Yeah, so in total,
Well,
3. Yeah, but yeah, so wrapping up, reverting back to what it used to be, was a demand. For Riot to commit a revenue pool for player salaries of $300,000 per Challenger League team per year. Allow LCS.
So that's a 60. That's a minimum. Basically, it's a minimum like salary of like 60 grand per
60.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's essentially where you're buying that to.
Yeah. Allow LCS orgs to partner with affiliates for cost sharing. Sure. Yeah, I guess the so they're looking for LCS teams to, not have to spend everything on themselves.
Well, I think that idea is not so much about like it's not so much for like, oh, the Big Ten can offload their costs and they're not worried. It's more about like I think if indie companies want to like get in there, but they realize that like the enormous costs associated, they can like
because that was the
can,
thing. I think
partner. They can essentially make their own partnerships to share the costs and get their team's feet in the door.
Yeah, because that was the thing that actually come up with the score video that I saw, that the NACL is a bit weird. It's the best way I figure it in my own head, and this is going to be a very weird thing. It's Eurovision for League of Legends, and I say that in this particular way because the thing with the NACL was that the big orgs could enter the NACL without fear of relegation. So all the big teams would stay there. And the reason I say it's like Eurovision is because countries who take part in Eurovision have to qualify for the final of Eurovision. Apart from 5 countries who pay so much for Eurovision, they get a spot every year regardless. And that's just in my head what the NACL was. So the big organisations just basically pay to stay there. And then, as you were saying there, Duncan, like smaller orgs, your indies and stuff like that, they would fight to stay up each time, knowing that they could go down, which I feel is a little bit.
Because think about the way that they got it now, right? With the they got your Big Ten just kind of sitting there on their spot. Essentially, it's just this it's just a system where like they pay a certain amount of money for their spot. They get to keep it, and regardless of how they perform, their names get on the big screen. Their names get featured in the competition. The competition, which is seen by a 9-figure number of people in the world every year because it's it's a huge game.
Yeah.
And then those people are the ones in line to get all the ad revenue and promotion,
Sponsorships and all that business.
sponsorships and all that business. So essentially, they just pay for an amount of money, and then they get, and then on the back end, they, they get their money back
Hmm.
from from the promotion, and it doesn't really matter how well they perform because there's no tie-in between their performance and the amount of money they make.
Mm.
Yeah, they essentially just, they get to do, they do equally as well financially, regardless of how their team performs. So they're not really actively incentivized
Mm.
to generate to field and source new talent that is
Yeah.
going to get them to the finals.
Hmm.
They're there anyway.
Yeah. Which, speaking of that,
Which is why, like, they want to change the system so that
Mm.
new smaller indie orgs and as well as unaffiliated teams, give them the opportunity to participate,
Yeah.
through their own merits, so that they could get in and be like, hey, you know what, maybe my team wants to be the one that gets to be in the center of the show, and maybe a team, I don't know, Evil Geniuses or whatever, just as a random name to pull out, maybe they didn't do well enough to deserve that this year,
Hmm.
so they can go down a peg.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like, these organizations are enormous. They have enormous values, and they need that consistent revenue stream to
Yes.
stay afloat. And because of the fact that they have this deal of exclusivity, this is another thing that I got from other angles of this.
Hmm.
If they ever decide that they want, to sell their spot, or change, or just or maintain a spot but sell, like, the rights to another person who wants
To
to
another. Yeah.
buy the team from them, the fact that they have a deal of exclusivity, uh it artificially drives up the value of their slot,
Mm. Yeah.
and essentially you can just buy an organization for X amount, millions of dollars, and then when you're bored of it or you give up on it, you can just sell it to another person who wants to give it a shot for 3 times as much as they bought it for.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like I'm sure I saw the number being thrown around. So basically, when franchising started, each slot was worth 10 mil.
Yeah.
And they're not worth 10 mil anymore. They're worth, varying amounts depending on the org in question. Each way, like I say, depending on their legacy. I mean, you bring that up given the fact that one of the teams currently in the LCS at the moment, TSM, are selling their slot because they're looking to go to another tier 1 region. They haven't said which tier 1 region, but they want to just set up shop somewhere else. And this issue with players effectively not wanting to, or wanting the league to be better for them to play in, because I don't want to turn around and just say they just don't want to play. That's not the thing. At the end of these, they're all gamers. They're all playing League of Legends. What's the first thing they want to do? Play the damn game that they like. But
Yeah.
they want to
And
make sure
that's
they're
and
still
this
liking it and it's valuable for them to do it.
and this is also part of the reason why, like, part of the reason why this is also a problem is that it's like, they want Riot to commit to, putting up 300 grand per team. That's going to be that's a cost to them of 3 million
Hmm.
for the whole NA league, for all their seasonal slots.
Yeah.
Uh, and the reason why Riot's pushing back on this, I think, is because, they've got these, they're already making a lot of money by having these organizations pay their dues to
Hmm.
get in. It's like they're essentially, you know, Riot likes having these big pro events because it's a huge promotional event for themselves. They
Yeah.
can make a lot of money off of hosting it and getting the right sponsorships, but it's not free. They don't just get to do it for free.
No.
It's costs a lot of money to organize all this shit. And as long as they can keep that, like, guaranteed income stream of, a certain amount of people paying for their slots, it's like they get a little bit of money off the top that helps them essentially, mitigate the cost of running the pro scene. and for their troubles, the orgs, they get their sponsorships deals and they make their money.
Yeah.
So it's like Riot is pushing back against, like, you know, paying out to the orgs, because they're like, well, I mean, why would we why would we do that?
What's
We're
in
losing.
it for us?
Yeah, essentially.
No, I can see that. Let's have a look at the other two demands, and then sort of see on the idea of Riot's pushback, and then the reason why at that point that the LCS isn't running, and the risk is sort of going from there. So yeah, demand 4, Riot guarantees LCS minimum contracts for the following year for the 5 players who win the LCS Summer Finals each year. I can understand this because I've seen this happen, particularly in, I believe, well, it wasn't even the LCS Finals. I think it was Worlds. The recent Worlds champions, 5 players, they have reached the pinnacle of League of Legends at that point. They have beat, the best teams in the world. And the following split, every single member of that team was gone.
Yeah.
Which is just, some
Yeah,
moved over for more challenges. Some were just let
that's
go
shit. I
because
mean, yeah, well, that's just it, right? Like there are there are whole players and teams. I won't name any particular because I'm not like being accusatory here. I'm not gonna call anybody out, but like there are players and teams that, essentially don't perform at all, don't get results, they don't grow, they don't do anything for their scene, who essentially just coast because, they whatever, like they're good enough, they're marketable enough or whatever.
again, take it.
And then but on the other hand, like, you can get a player that wins the whole thing, or a team that wins the whole team. The whole fuck me.
Team that
A
wins the
team
whole
that wins
thing,
the
yeah.
whole, and it's like, well, we're done with you.
Yeah.
You can go.
We've got no further growth for you. It's like,
Or it's
Well-
like, it's like they might, it's like, oh, if they get all, if they get a little bit like, hey, we just won the thing, can we get like a pay raise or something? It's like, nah,
I-
actually, we're gonna replace you with someone who costs half as much as you
I
instead.
I believe at that point that was actually part of the problem. It was a preemptive culling of the team because they knew, well, these players' stock had just rose because now they are, world championship winning top laner as opposed to top laner. It's like, see, again though, that seems a bit weird on that, because again, especially if a lot of money from an org is coming from sponsorships and stuff like that, isn't it easier to market? Well, I know that there's the issue of, well, the player wants more money, but surely if you are decent enough with wrangling a sponsorship, surely you can offset that a little bit. Surely you can, work something out, negotiate a price that means that you as an organization gets money and you keep your player happy at the same time. Surely there's a way of working. I mean, I guess at that point this sort of shows, I don't want to say immature in the idea of them, I don't just mean like they all go out on the lash and tie each other to fucking lampposts every day. I mean immature in the fact that the esports, in especially compared to traditional sports, is immature is the fact that they're younger. Let's be honest. To take soccer, football, which has been going for hundreds of years, and in a sort of a professional capacity for, decades. You've got esports, which is really 25 years, would you say?
I mean,
So
generously speaking, yeah, it's like, I mean, I guess, StarCraft probably would have been like the genesis of the esports, and that would have been going like, late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Was when that would have started.
So yeah, so in comparison
25
to
years
traditional
ago, give or
sports,
take.
yeah. So in comparison to traditional sports, they are babies. They are babies.
And talk about, and I mean, you talk about immaturity. I mean, look at the players. I mean,
Well,
I mean, like, I know, like, youthful vitality is important for any kind of sport, but like it's not that weird to see a dude who's like in his 30s, like I don't know, playing like a game of football or something.
Hmm.
Like it happens, sure, but
Yeah.
like you look at the people who play esports. It's like if you're 25 and you play esports, like you're getting on the old side.
Yeah.
Like you're thinking about retirement almost.
Well, yeah,
It's just
I think I remember stuff like that when I first started watching competitive League of Legends. When you're hearing someone saying, "Oh yeah, I'm retiring," and it's like they've had a bright 3 years in the business, and like what, from 19 to 22, and it's like, Jesus Christ,
yeah. It's like there are people who are so young who start so young that like they can't even like do live events until they've been playing for like 2 years because they started when they were 16 and they
hmm
weren't like old enough to like
yeah,
to like sign professional
yeah,
contracts and go to major
getting a
like
visa.
live tournaments.
Yeah, getting a visa to fly out to an international tournament was an absolute pain in the ass. It's like, all right, so what are you doing?
Yeah.
Are you taking part in a sports event? How old are you again? Sorry, what? 15? I don't think we're going to get you for a special professional sports visa here, are we? Now it's easier now. You don't even unless there is a world event going on. I don't mean some like a pandemic or a global conflict or something like
Mm.
that. Getting a visa is a lot easier as a esports player, provided you've not committed the crimes. So
Yeah. And anyway, the point I was trying to get on that
sorry,
is
go
just like,
yeah,
a lot of these are like actual children.
yeah.
Like these people are like some of these like a lot of these people are like barely college age.
Hmm.
You know, the overwhelming majority of people who are currently active in esports right now are younger than me.
Mm,
Never mind you. Most of them are younger than me.
yeah. Let's be
Uh,
honest. There are barely coaches that are my age that are younger than me. There.
yeah, and it's like those people is like, sometimes when you're 19 years old, you make bad decisions.
Hmm.
You sign weird contracts. You make deals that seem great at the time, but then when you've been playing for a few years and you're like 24, it's like sometimes you go like, you know, I'm not sure I'm super happy with the way things are panning out. I'm pretty sure like I could be doing better. I should be doing better.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, it would be good to have. It would be nice to have certain provisions
Hmm.
to make sure that
To
these people are being looked after.
Yeah, and then in that case, I can actually understand the what do they actually call it? The the LCSPA, the League Championship Series Players Association. There we go. I can understand why they like to say that yeah, you've won the summer finals, therefore really at a minimum you should be playing for provided you're not, like I say, hitting the ripe old age of 25. Now, that actually say that there's now, there's a couple of players who actually are approaching their 30s now. It's a bit the longevity is a, is increasing, the gaps widening now. Now there's been experience in it. But yeah, winning a major championship should, yeah, I could understand. So you shouldn't be getting thrown out. It's a bit weird to sack someone for winning something. You know what I mean? It's just like that's just me. But the last demand was to introduce a 3-5 roster continuity to provide players on released NACL rosters first priority in maintaining their slots in the upcoming NACL season if a majority continue to compete together. So that's just wordy to me. I'm not. I sort of assume that just means if a multiple amount of players leave, there's still some sort of ability to allow the team to still operate, I guess.
Roster continuity by players on released rosters. First priority in maintaining their slots in the upcoming.
So I guess rather than just bringing in a new team,
I
it's
guess the
just like,
idea is that is like if the team if they get released from their contract, but they still want to play together, like, and if a new team wants to pick them up, they have to hire at least 3 of the 5 members. I think that's what
I guess, yeah,
I think that's what that's supposed to be.
right. That makes a little bit of sense, I guess, in that.
I think that's what they're trying to say.
Yeah, because I guess at the end of the day, those are all teams. There's a bit of a weird thing. It's like League of Legends at the end of the day. I know there's all this. This is a sort of a problem with the sort of esports thing, but I guess for as much as they try to want to differentiate themselves from traditional sports, they end up falling into every pitfall of traditional sports every single step of the way. saying League of Legends is a team game, but constantly promoting the same like 3 or 4 disparate players and just going, this is the best mid laner of all the team, and they single-handedly guide their teams to victory, and it's like, don't I hear enough of this with football? It's like, this defender is the sole reason, no goals getting on this football team. It's like, no, great. There's still another 10 people around him that work on that. That's me.
I feel like that's a very Western thing too, though. Like that's a big part of the reason why Koreans are so dominant, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons why Koreans are big and are so dominant in StarCraft, right?
Yeah.
But like one of the big things is that like they have these, they have their team houses where all the people who are part of a certain organization, they all like live together in a physical house, and they play against each other, and they train with each other like 16 hours a day almost, and they really like play off each other, like they like they'll push each other to do things that they wouldn't normally do, and force them to get to improve on their weaknesses and things like that. It's like they're and even in like their team sports, they're a little bit, I don't know, they're much more team oriented. Like they don't really like, it's not so much about like the individual promotion.
Yeah. No, I can get that. Yeah, because I can just sort of picture this. It's like, it's funny because someone can, for a League of Legends fan, if you walked up to someone and you said LEC, what significant things about the LEC, someone would probably turn around and say something like Caps, G2's mid laner. It's like, you don't want to just say G2, years of winning. No, Caps. It's like, okay, no, he's a very good player. He's a very good player, and you see, for me, if someone said LEC, I'd probably turn around and say Caps' dad, because that guy is an absolute treasure for the LEC, and he needs to be protected constantly. Probably the biggest fan of esports is the father of one of the players who, let's be honest, respects everyone. that to me is the LEC, but I'm taking it off track again. But yeah, no, So you mean, Western sort of thing of the players themselves are brands as opposed to the teams and that. I guess that's a thing. I mean, sports games do that all the time, don't they? Put a single player on the box art of a video game and just like, right, yes, when you think football, you think Lionel Messi. When I think Lionel Messi, I think that tax dodged. Sorry,
but to get back to the topic at hand.
To get back to the topic.
I'm feeling. Here's my theory, right? And this may shock you to hear this may blow your mind a little bit.
Okay, Pikachu.
I get the impression that Riot Games as a company, generally speaking, for reasons unknown, is probably not interested in running the esports scene at a cost. I get the impression that they're interested in running it only as long as it is at worst net neutral, but preferably profitable.
I would say that, and if
and
we
I
take
would say
into
that
account, we mentioned Valorant just earlier on, haven't we? Valiant is the new child. Valorant is currently the profit maker. When you when you think of NA esports at this point, it is Valorant. That's what that seems.
And that's the big thing too. That what's interesting about the North American scene, because there's a certain duality to the North American scene that's like kind of crazy. So like my biggest frame of reference for esports is always going to be StarCraft.
Yeah.
Now StarCraft is really big in Korea. It's not just the game is treated more seriously as a sport. It's watched more. It's played more.
They built purpose-built stadiums for that fucking game.
Yeah, it's like it's huge over there.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, when it comes to things like a lot of the team sports, the team-based esports like Valorant and League of Legends, actually quite hugely popular in North America,
Yeah.
despite their lackluster performance. Like, let's be
Mhm.
honest, NA is on every gaming front is pretty much always behind.
They
But
get their participation trophies.
in terms of viewership, huge,
Yeah.
actually quite huge.
Mhm.
So it's like they have it's like they get all of their views from North American audiences, but their North American teams kind of blow.
Mm. Mm.
So
I mean, sort of,
uh,
the sort of interesting thing on there is that it was this year's MSI for League of Legends, Cloud9 and Golden Guardians were their representatives, and you know they, well, I say this, I explained this when I did my rant regarding the LEC and in particular, the issues regarding allegations that were sent towards or allegations that came out for XL Esports, being dominantly being a reason why they shouldn't be in the league, in spite of the fact that that other teams, other orgs have done similar or have been alleged to have done similar issues regarding contract disputes. But the difference, but fan response to teams doing shady contract disputes depended on the success of the team alleged to have done it. So XL performing badly over the past couple of splits, get this allegation. Yes, this is the reason why they need to leave. Let's just throw out a team that rhymes with. No, let's just say it. G2 had the same sort of allegations thrown at them, but because they were successful, it was well, they just need to do better, but we trust that they can do it. It's like, no. Treat the allegations with the same weight. I mean, part of that was because the person who ran that organization turned out to be a supporter of a misogynist. But what can I say?
gaming, right?
But yeah. So
But anyway,
would you?
it's like that. It's like I get the impression, it's like Riot Games does not want to will not continue to run any esport for nothing.
So,
If it's not profitable, they'll drop it like a stone. And these demands, I have the sneaking suspicion, will make at least the North American scene, which is currently waning,
mhm.
um
So I was actually about to ask
in
that
terms of
question to
viewership,
you. Then.
the numbers are down a lot, like
Mm,
something like 50% almost.
yeah.
And if these demands push them, over a certain line, over a certain margin, it's like I have a feeling that is why they're pushing so hard against
Mm,
it. It's because it's like you'd think that there's no amount of no amount of a cost that would be worth it to completely just torpedo your own brand by just obliterating a hugely popular spectator sport
mm,
and just like yeah, fuck it, we're just not going to do that anymore. You would think that the amount of damage that would do to your brand could never be worth it, but
mm-hmm.
I guess it could. It
Yeah.
protect your investment, I guess.
Yeah. So my question I was about to ask you on this: would you, based on what's happened and what you've said, regarding sort of the LCS and that, is this a blessing in disguise to Riot?
In
Just
what
this sort of
form?
whole thing that you've got a waning esport that's coming through. You know, you're sat there trying to look at the bottom line of whether it's profitable or not. You consider you may be somewhere in the back, someone's turning around saying, "Guys, maybe we should just pack up League of Legends in North America," and then the players association just throw the ball at them and just go, "We're not carrying on." If you've been thinking that you want to wrap that up, isn't this just the ability to, you know?
It could be. I mean, no, I don't think you're totally off. It's weird because here's another thing that I learned, that is another lesson to be learned from the StarCraft scene, which is StarCraft 2 is currently in dire straits,
Yeah.
like as far as an esport goes. The like StarCraft Brood War remastered is having a pretty big explosion again, particularly in Korea.
Yeah.
But as far as like SC2 goes, SC2 viewership in Korea is like bottomed out. Like they can't stand it. There's a whole other there's a long list of reasons that I'm not going to get into why that's happening in Korea. But it's dying really badly. The prize pools announced for the 2023 like official tournaments were slashed by anywhere between 50 to 80% over the previous year.
Mm.
Closer to 50% in the North American scene and Western scenes, closer to 80% in the Korean scenes. It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And a big part of this is that because Activision Blizzard is kind of like giving up on it, and they're just not seeing the money there anymore. They're slashing their investment in it, and
Yeah.
the overwhelming majority of the prize pool funds available for any given tournament in an official tournament is coming from Activision Blizzard's pocket. So, basically, like, whatever from like, ad revenue and sponsorship deals and, participation fees and et cetera, whatever money that they think they can generate from hosting the tournament, uh, whatever, once they've taken a satisfactory amount of profit, that's what's left over for their prize pool. And that amount is going down. And because, like most of the money that they hand out as prizes comes from Activision Blizzard. If they give up on it, then there's no money left in the scene, and the scene dies. And so now there's a big push to sort of save SA2, the SC2 pro scene, by pushing more regional tournaments and more like crowdfunded and player promoted prizes.
Yeah.
Like there's a big there's a there's a tournament going on. There's a sort of like unofficial circuit going on right now. I think it's called the KSL. I think it's what it's called, which is basically just like some dudes who are just like a big fan of the Korean StarCraft scene, who opened up a Patreon and said, "Hey, we're gonna invite every like pro Korean player that wants to sign up to participate in our online tournaments, and whatever money you put into this Patreon will be divided up as a prize pool for them to win in their weekly tournaments. And if it goes really successful, then we'll do like either quarterly or annual like finales."
That's actually pretty cool. The idea of a crowd-funded tournament.
Yeah, and so like it's kind of interesting because like there's a big push to make Riot more responsible for the teams to commit more of their money and to support the scene more first party. And I definitely think that there's room for that, and that I think that's important to have like official support. But I also think that league esports orgs need to kind of watch it.
Yeah.
Because you might not it's sort of a careful what you wish for sort of situation, because when you have the scene dependent entirely on one company, or 80% dependent on one company,
Yeah.
you get situations like that where whatever they say goes, and if they decide there's no more money to be made in the scene goes away. And then it's up to you guys. And if you don't have a infrastructure in play, if it's not the norm to have these kinds of events put on by you know second party companies and put on by you know more grassroots kind of scenes and tournaments, you end up with a scene that's so sparse that people don't care enough to play at the pro level, because there's nothing
Nothing
to
for
be
it.
gained from it.
Yeah.
You're not going to work 16 hours you're not gonna play any game 100 hours a week to make whatever, like $11,000 a year in whatever weekly and quarterly tournaments you can get your hands on. People do it because it's like, hey, you win the big finale and maybe you get $250,000 or $100,000 or something like that. It's a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
It might be worth it. You
Yeah.
know.
So let's bring this up there because we'll wrap this up now. So just to briefly go on this, Riot effectively looked at those demands, doubled down. This was after in the process removing their required tier of League of Legends. So in regards to the ranked tiers for League of Legends players. I think we said something like you needed to be a diamond minimum in order to play or such. They removed that requirement to try and get other players, to have organizations field teams, and they told the orgs to do it, and that didn't work because a lot of players who weren't at that requirement or were even outside of the current pro lineups went and said, "No, we're not being a scab." Union talk. Union talk for someone who crosses the picket line. I've heard the word scab once, and it was in 1997 or like 98, something like that. It was basically when SmackDown started for WWE or WWF at the time. They had a storyline in which all the referees were tired of constantly getting hit by ref bumps and walked out. But a couple of referees crossed the picket line to ref some of the matches, and they were called scabs. So that's where I learned that from. But let's look into the crystal ball. If you would predict something here, 2 weeks' time, let's say we come back here 2 weeks' time, do you reckon the LCS will have played their first matches? It's due to start on the 15th. They delayed it for 2 weeks. It's due to start on the 15th. With what you know, or what we know right now and what we see, do you think it will go ahead?
I honestly, I'm very pessimistic when it
Mm.
comes to these kinds of things. Like, it's so rare for big corporations to make exclusively like positive changes towards their attitude towards a decision they've made. It's like the, what I think is going to end up happening is I think that I think that the players are gonna are gonna panic and be like, hey, like this might, like they might actually be serious about this,
Mm.
like like for real. They kind of have all the bargaining power.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, we said this
and
before, haven't we? The players want
I
to
think
play,
that
so.
I think at a certain point, um, it's either going to be canceled completely or they're going to come back together under whatever threat of some kind of like vague legal action or something like that. And if they do come together, but this way, I think it's just as likely that the whole season will get canceled. But the other coin side of that coin, if they do get back together and go ahead, I pretty much guarantee that um that they will not have their demands met. I
Yeah.
get the feeling that it'll be everyone is more upset than they started with. They will not, the demands will not have been met. Riot will not have Riot's not gonna get anything out of it. I really think it's much more likely that not much will move. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, I sort of on this thing. If I could have, like, given that this has never happened before, the chance that I guess I mean in terms of sort of the esports thing, as far as I'm aware, yeah, this has never happened before. It was big enough that they walked out in the first place. I would be on the idea, like you say, I'm with you on the idea that the odds are there that this won't go ahead.
Yeah,
That this
it's like
jokey empty stadium I'm seeing will just stay empty for basically until next year.
I give, like I said, I give a 50-50 of like 50-50 they don't get together, or they do get together, and not only does the LCSPA not get their demands, but Riot also gets a truncated season, which means less, ad revenue,
Yeah.
less money
And that just
incoming. Like both parties will be less happy with the situation.
and then
And
that
it's like, and I'm sure, they'll be like, we want to make sure things are good. We take care of our people, blah blah blah. We're committed to keeping this scene alive. Meanwhile, like furiously behind the scene from day one, like as soon as the season ends, there's like, so how do we destroy this entire thing? How do we just completely torpedo this scene in
yeah,
a,
how
in a way
do
that's
we wrap
legal
this up?
and profitable?
Yeah.
Because this needs to go.
And
Because that's how companies work. That's how corporations work.
Yeah.
They don't apologize. They don't give in to demands. They don't give out free money for no reason.
No.
And they don't hesitate to burn a contract, because you know what? When you're a $1 billion company, lawyers are cheap. When you're a pro esports player and you make like, whatever, like 100 grand a year if you're really lucky, uh not so much. Lawyers are kind of expensive.
Yeah. And for me on that, even like you say, if they do get effectively forced, quotes, to play this split, you can absolutely bet your bottom dollar that they are not going to succeed at Worlds this year. Because sort of morale of players and the sort of the quality will just go down. And therefore when it comes to actual world tournament, they wanted to be there, but they wanted to be there on their terms, and that's going to show. It's just they're going to show on a player's side. I mean, let's say it's a bit odd. Let's say we'll see in a fortnight.
Yeah, it's like,
what happens?
I can speak from personal experience that when these sorts of things happen, like for example, I live in the province of Ontario,
Yeah.
which is a part of Canada. Canada has a system with their education, where the duty of both funding and running uh the educational system at the post-secondary level is split between the national and provincial levels. The
Mm.
funding is majority of the burden goes to the province. It's probably like an 80-20 split or 70-30 split roughly of like setting the rules and also providing the funding. So most of the dealings when in a college or a teachers union in Canada, in this case the province of Ontario, have to have an issue, they take
Mm.
it up with the province because they do most of the work.
Yeah.
Um, in the last 8 years since I started college for the first time, there have been two separate major strikes within the province of Ontario. Both times, the teachers' demands were not met, and the province essentially forced them, like passed legislation to force them to go back to work with a very minimal amount of compensation, like pretty much like the legal minimum. Like, all right, this is what we have to give you to make you work. We're not giving you any of your other shit.
Yeah.
And this has happened twice, and they've done it with nurses as well. Nurses are also having a big problem in Ontario,
Mm.
because that's another thing that's sort of like split a little bit more evenly. But again, provinces do have a big say in the medical system,
Yeah.
and nurses, what with COVID not being so much of a thing now, but like when it was hot and just in general,
Mm.
the lack of funding going on in the provincial healthcare system, like it's a shit show.
Yeah.
Like there are people who have to wait months for basic routine surgeries, people who have critical or life-threatening conditions that might have to wait hours, days, weeks to see somebody.
Mm-hmm.
People are getting turned away for shit that could kill them. And again, they go on strike. They raise their demands. They say, "Hey, literally, like this is a crisis. Fix this." And the government says, eh.
Yeah.
And they don't fix it. Like it's cynical, but like this is just how big organizations work. This is how they operate. They just don't give a fuck.
the bottom line over anything else. I mean, you mentioned about sectors which have like taken sort of industrial action and stuff like that. I could probably actually count the sectors or like the areas of employment over here in good old Blighty that are not taking industrial action. We are about as close to having a general strike as we've ever been without actually having one, like what happened in the 80s. So, you can see that sort of everywhere. But there goes our big, very feature topic on the LCS. Like I say, in a couple of weeks' time.
Almost feature length. In a few more
Yeah,
minutes, and we can
yeah,
call it a movie.
Yeah, it's a feature length. It's actually been a topicked podcast. So what we'll do is there's a couple of news stories that are there. I will take one, and it's this one because I've read multiple sources on it, and which was hilarious. So Diablo 4. This is not technically this is not
speaking of Activision Blizzard.
Yeah. Well, this is not technically What the Fuck Blizzard. This is What the Fuck Future Games Show. So to hype up the release of Diablo 4, which is out on early access now, like I said, I'm a giant hypocrite. Me and Martin have been playing it, and our friend, one of our Pauls, have been playing Diablo 4 now. The game doesn't come out till Tuesday. So we'll see how the servers completely melt once, other players are playing it. But currently they're fine. But to hype it up, as part of their sort of games, like summer games hype show called the Future Games Show, which is part of Games Radar, I believe that is the actual magazine. They got access to speak to a couple of the devs from Blizzard about Diablo 4, and they sent out a tweet and a YouTube community post asking for questions to ask the devs for Diablo 4. And the video came out, the Q&A video came out, and there were lots of very, as said in the journalism community, soft questions. Almost making it look like, maybe Blizzard picked and chose what questions they wanted to answer. Like, a question like, oh, the cutscenes in Diablo 4 look gorgeous. How do you maintain that high quality that you're known for? Something along that line. It's like, oh, jeez, these are soft. But then people.
But it's also like that's barely a fucking question. Like,
yeah,
it's like that's not even so much a question. That's just an opportunity for fucking Activision Blizzard to go wank themselves and promote themselves.
Which would
It's
be
just
hilarious.
It's like, oh gee, do you think fucking Activision Blizzard may have had some kind of indirect influence on whether or not that particular question would be asked? Do you fucking think so? Of course. Jesus Christ.
Well, actually, just to give you this, the answer was no, because what actually happened was even funnier. No one responded to the community post. No one responded to the tweet with a question. It's not What the Fuck Blizzard. Technically, in this particular case, and we gotta touch wood on this. Touch wood. Blizzard did nothing wrong. Future Games Show did. They faked the questions.
They faked the questions.
They faked where they came from. So it's like not possible. The questions didn't come from the community. The Twitter accounts, so it's even
and
worse.
The
Reddit accounts.
Fucking Christ!
Yeah.
So it's even worse. It's like they instead of freaking Blizzard wanking themselves, is fucking
Games Radar and Future Game Show wanked them off.
Yeah, it's just like they're just shelling off to Blizzard. Just be like, please notice me and love me, Blizzard. We said such nice things about you.
Yeah. So it was mad because there was a couple of like Twitch streamers and YouTubers who were going through the questions, comparing them to the accounts that they said that they came from, and either the account didn't exist or it did exist but never tweeted the reply to the thing. One of the accounts was made like 10 years ago, only had one post 10 years ago, and it said, now this came from a Sid Alpha video, but it was like it came from the account had one tweet and it said, I love Justin Bieber. which which was funny because on the Sid Alpha video, it's like questionable music tastes aside, these didn't ask a question about Diablo 4. Future Game Show came out afterwards and responded to this is what the news post at that point. They responded and basically said that this was actually not just fan questions. It was a combination of fan questions and FGS staff questions to Blizzard, but they put fake accounts in to protect people under anonymity and blah 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 bullshit. I honestly don't think there were any fan questions. Personally, they were just journalist questions. Again, like you said, made as soft as possible to just give Blizzard an easy ride.
How aggressively do you have to deliberately avoid any news whatsoever related to Activision Blizzard as a company and everything that they do every single fucking day of the year, that you would actually genuinely ask a question like the example one anyway?
Yeah.
Like honestly, it's almost like it's the level of like it's like a Logan Paul stan at this point where it's like literally 100% of the people that care that are this positive about the subject are the people who do nothing but consume information and media directly from this thing and never go outside the bubble to hear about all of the awful things that people are saying about them all the time, every fucking day.
Yeah. Well, actually, we'll put this
Logan.
Yeah, we'll put this Logan Paul into thing. Annoyingly, Logan Paul is a good professional wrestler. That's a weird thing to come out of his mouth. He's a weird, he's a weird professional wrestler. He also fucking filmed a corpse in a forest
and
for fucking clicks and ran an NFT scheme.
Scam. It's not a scheme. It's a scam.
Scam. Sorry, I mispelled. I mispronounced.
Yeah, no. He stole money. It's fucking okay. Like that's what it is. It's you can say you can have a scheme that's legal and it can be a positive thing. It sounds nasty, but you can have a scheme that's totally up and fine. It doesn't steal people's money.
Yeah, but in this particular
but it was
case, it was an out and out scam. NFTs are scams. It's just
but yeah, it's just like for real though. Like who is really who really has this much of a hard on for Blizzard? Who? Yeah. I don't know them. I do not know who they are.
Yeah. I'd like to say I've said this. We started this mini segment by saying I'm currently playing Diablo 4. I'm still going to call them out every fucking opportunity for when they during this harassment lawsuit and stuff like that. To which, by the way, brief aside, it says at the bottom of the article, Bobby Kotick came out and said he can absolutely guarantee there was no harassment that happened in Activision Blizzard, and that everything that's happened so far is the fault of abusive unions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whatever, dickhead. So yeah, right on that.
Also, I'll continue to point out as often as you point out to the contrary. I'm not playing Diablo 4. I'm not playing any Activision Blizzard games currently. I'm not even playing StarCraft, and I already own that game.
Yeah,
I'm probably never going to buy any of their products again.
That's the thing. So that's the thing.
I think they're just a total joke.
Yeah, two separate situations. They're still converging on the same, the same opinion based on what we can see and what has been told and what has been clarified, confirmed, and all that. The management of Activision Blizzard are fucking awful. We can still do that. That's just how that comes up. But Bobby Kotick, I don't want to say allegedly is a dickhead. Because from what he's saying, he quite clearly confirms that there's no allegations there. Anyway, we better wrap this up. Very quick schedule.
Move on with our lives.
Yeah, very quick schedule for this week. Monday, not yet titled Monday stream. I am intending to play Rhyme from Tequila Works as part of my continuing Riot Forge project. Schedule streams after that. Thursday, Teamfight Thursdays. Probably still back on the Howling Abyss. Who knows? Friday, play session. It's a mystery box. A couple of weeks ago, we played Fall Guys, for God's sake, and that was fucking hilarious. And weekend role-playing Nottingham games. We're now done with Tales of Symphonia, so now I'm playing a Tales game that I've never played before. Or technically, I played 49 minutes of it. So it's Tales of Vesperia. So yeah, right.
And I'll probably, I'm sure me and Andrew will pop in at some point in the Tuesday, Wednesday
Mhm.
range. My time is a little bit more limited now because I'm spending more of my time doing some studying for
Yeah.
a re-education program I'm a part of. But I'll probably be able to find, a couple hours either Tuesday and or Wednesday to pop in and do a stream with her, play some Pokemon, play something else maybe.
Yeah. So just
We still
keep it.
haven't our the Wind Waker file got all fucked up and we haven't fixed it yet. I don't know if that's it's what basically happened is we don't have the Wii U gamepad, which has certain features. To skip a lot of important details, basically, sometimes you can get a glitch if you're using a third-party controller. It's not a pad. You can get into a glitch where like certain things you can't do, like and if you haven't saved after a certain while, you pretty much have to just restart the console and go back to whatever your last save was, which in our case was over 2 hours earlier. And she just hasn't fixed that yet. She hasn't gotten around to it. I don't know when or if that'll get fixed. She hasn't mentioned it in a while, so. But
I mean, on the flip side, the
that's
Pokemon Showdown / Pokemon Black and White thing still seems to be going fine. Touch
yeah, we're
wood.
having fun with that.
So
Yeah, we're still having fun with that. So yeah, we'll keep that going.
yeah.
And but yeah, the Legend of Zelda stream is postponed indefinitely for now.
Which is a
We'll see what
shame.
we can do about it.
But this is now in the ad-supported content range, and I don't care. I'm just going to carry on going. Screw it. If you enjoyed this and you are still hearing this, please like, share, subscribe, pass it on. Maybe we could get 2,000 downloads a month. Who knows?
It could happen.
Yeah, two men talk about something they But
Yeah,
LCS stuff.
we'll be all like, "Yeah, get that money." Oh,
Yeah.
that didn't look like shit. Like,
I
yeah, look at that
I don't
money.
actually have physical currency anywhere near me, and all I could do is drop my phone, which contains my contactless card. But I don't want to. I need my phone.
Come on, what's you tell me you don't got a
Hold on. Here it is.
impact resistant phone?
Here it is. There we go. Yeah, my other hand, no, my other hand just desperately underneath it, which if my mic actually caught it, would have just made a squelch sound as it went into my hand. But yeah, so you could like, share, subscribe, and the video will be on the YouTube on the Wednesday, along with the audio version of the podcast, which is available everywhere your podcast is served. Particularly, it's on Acast. Download it off Acast. Because that's where the download counts come in. But yeah, other than that,
Hey Ryan, guess what? Look, it's a Mobius strip. It's in the shape of a gold-plated one-sided die.
nice.
It's one-sided because it's it's a Mobius strip. It's the one ring to rule them all. The one ring because it's a one.
Oh yeah, very last bit of news on that. Lord of the Rings Gollum is a pile of shite, and the developers have apologised for it being a pile of shite. Look, I would have tried playing it for a laugh, but it's full price and don't get the money back on that sort of stuff. Unless I did a stream for 1 hour 50.
There you go.
Just give me the time to refund it afterwards, but I don't want.
There was a bit of like a meme speed run category for the Resident Evil 3 remake where
Yeah.
like beating it in under 2 hours so that you could get the refund for it. Getting it 100% done and then getting it refunded.
Wow.
That's good. I like that shit. Anyway, we're out of here.
Yeah, we'll catch you in a bit. See you later. Bye. Hey, outro. Bye. Thank you.